wanted the best? You've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. The Chris Voss Show. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We really appreciate you. And today, once again, we're going to do some learning. There's going to be some learning in. I don't know. That's a thing. Just making it up. That's the ramble, folks. That's what we do. We make it up. We're going to do some learning today, and we've got some great New York Times bestselling authors on the show. They're going to be talking to us about their latest book that just came out April 4th, 2023. Can you believe it's almost May? Jesus, where did this month go? Anyway, guys, as always, we're going to get to them in a second. But in the meantime, we have to shame you, guilt you, and try and motivate you to put 5 people in your downline by subscribing to the Chris Voss Show MLM. No, I'm just kidding. It's not MLM. But seriously, though, tell people that they should subscribe to the show. Give us those 5-star reviews on iTunes. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss. And we're working on the show over at TikTok now. There's TikTok Chris Voss 1, and there's TikTok the Chris Voss Show podcast, and there's my dogs over there too. They have their own account we just set up, Huskies of Chris Voss. You can find it over there, and all links to the Chris Voss Show. It's at TikTok. It's where all the kids are. It's where all the stupidity is too, but that's another story. Anyway, guys, the amazing authors we have on the show, Kelly Starrett and Juliet Starrett, are the authors on today's show. They've written a multitude of books. Their newest book just came out April 4th, 2023, Built to Move, the 10 Essential Habits to Help You Move Freely and Live Fully. For those of you who want to live freely and live fully. For those of you who don't, you can skip the show because, I don't know, death sounds really cool, but don't do that. Listen to the show and you'll enjoy it. You'll learn something and you'll move freely and live fully. Welcome to the show, Kelly and Juliet. How are you?
We're great. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, what an intro. Every time you nail it.
I try. And sometimes we whiff one, but it's always a ramble and it's always random and whatever bleeds out of my brain, and there we are. So Kelly, Juliet, give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs there.
Sure. We are at thereadystate.com. And if you want to learn more about our book specifically, it's builttomove.com.
There you go. And you guys have written a few other books, if we want to get a plug in for them as well. How many books have you written?
So I think we're at 6 books. One of them is the 2 editions, but our first book was called Becoming a Supple Leopard. We also wrote another book called Ready to Run, a third book called Deskbound, a little book for paddlers called Waterman 2.0, and then we did a second edition of Supple Leopard and now Built to Move. So if my math is correct, I think that's 6 books.
All right, now I have to ask, what's a supple leopard? Is that, I don't know, me on Friday nights in a leotard or?
Nailed it. That's exactly what this is about. Ultimately, can people do what they're supposed to with their body? And can you access that at a moment's notice? Can you feel better and move the way you're supposed to? And that was really the sort of central idea of trying to re-empower people with their bodies. You know, we just get stuck in these little windows of movement. All of a sudden, you can't put your arms over your head. And that was the whole idea originally 10 years ago when we wrote Supple Leopard.
So what is a supple leopard, though? Is it
Well,
just
tell that story, Kills.
like,
we had a couple reasons. One of us, we had a friend who was in Navy Special Warfare. He came back. He'd been shot in Afghanistan, and he's like, Kelly, I really appreciate all the work you're doing. I'm feeling better, but the leopard never stretches. And I was like, it's a really good point, Andy. You're not a leopard. And by the way, that if you notice this, but the leopard can attack and defend at full physical capacity and at a moment's notice. It doesn't really have to do all these elaborate things. It can
literally be like laying in a tree, taking a nap, and leopard. Be like, oh, look, there's a kudu. Here I go.
That's me when I have my coffee in the mornings. We talked about in the green room.
And as soon as you hit that skull crusher, I think is what you called it, and then you go right into it. So that sort of idea came out of this joke with our friend about, and then the word supple is just too fantastic. And so that alliteration together, we knew that we would never, ever be mistaken for anyone else. So the idea was born about how can we teach people, and this first book was really a heavy duty textbook, but how do we give people their range of motion back? How can we move the physical therapist and the physician out of the conversation and re-empower people in their own homes and in the gyms to actually feel better and take care of their bodies?
There you go. And here I thought it was a strip club name.
Same.
So anyway, guys, all jokes aside. So anyway, guys, what motivated you want to write this book, Built to Move?
Well, I'll start, and I'm sure Kelly can add some color commentary, but, we've been working with performing athletes for over 20 years, from every major sport to Olympians to elite military units. And, what we realized is that if we just took the lessons we learned there and did nothing with them, then that was just sport and had no ultimate purpose. And the other thing we saw is that, thanks to the internet, there is a massive amount of health and fitness information out there.
It's a fire hose.
And for everybody who doesn't have the luxury of being able to have a personal trainer and a coach and an athletic trainer and a massage therapist
And a PhD to sort through
and
it.
a PhD to sort through all of the madness, that those people ultimately were very confused and weren't really sure where to start, weren't sure what to prioritize, weren't sure which levers were going to move, which were going to move the biggest levers for them from a health standpoint. And, when you look at the data actually out there about our overall health as a country, I mean, people are now spending trillions of dollars on health and fitness and belonging to gyms and supplements and you name it. But all of our metrics are still trending downhill. We're becoming more heavy, more diabetic. There's more back pain, disability, loneliness, depression, you name it. If you look at any statistic of health, we're not doing a great job. And so we felt
and that speaks to the failure of
Yeah.
this institution of health,
Yeah.
right? This commodization of
we
health.
call it
and
the
fitness.
fitness industrial complex.
Yeah.
And so we felt like there were a lot of really small things that we do in our own lives. And those are the same things that we recommend as the basic and foundational practices of our elite performers that we could actually share with a broader audience and really make a difference in people's lives and overall health.
And let me add that this has got to exclude diet and exercise. Yes, we're going to talk about fueling for and making sure you have the right nutrients on so you have healthy tissues. We all want that, right? So that our knees don't hurt. But people have gotten the message that they should exercise, and that still hasn't worked. And what we realized is that we could create a set of physical behaviors, kind of thinking differently about our world and in our busy schedules from when we wake up to when we go to bed, that didn't include exercise. And if you did all of these things, lo and behold, you could actually feel better and create more durability. So you can take the hits, take the stress, and be ready to go when you want to go, and do that as long as you want.
And I think that's one of the things that's very controversial. I mean, we obviously love exercise. We owned a commercial gym for 16 years. We exercise for fun. But what we've really learned over the years is in many ways, exercise is extracurricular, which is controversial. We think it's important. There's a lot of great elements to it, but there are so many other things that are low-hanging fruit that people can do for their health that can be done in short amounts of time that make a huge difference.
There's some people that have been saying that sitting is the new smoking. Like if you're sitting too much, you're never moving. It's almost as dangerous as smoking some cigarettes. I haven't really tried it. I never got into the smoking part.
You
but I am
could
into the
race them.
sitting
You could
part.
definitely race them and see how that went. That's actually James Levine of the Mayo Clinic, who's one of the preeminent obesity researchers on the planet. And what he realized, and I think we caught on it, and then we were all like, that's funny and kind of, witty and sticks in our head, but it's not sitting is bad. Let's get rid of that. Let's say that not moving is less good. And so we have a bunch of friends who have jobs. They fly planes.
Our bus drivers.
They cannot not sit as part of their job. You might have to sit down and focus at work, but it's two things. One is that we're really saying, hey, marathon bouts of inactivity are less good for your body. And two, how can we combat that idea of, like, if you had to stand, you had a job where you had to stand still all day long, it was murder. And that also doesn't work. What we're looking at is how can we create more opportunities for you to move more in your environment? And the research now is pretty unequivocal. Human beings' brains and our bodies work better when we move. Turns out, for example, that the difference really in the research between people who are able to maintain their weight over a lifetime and people who struggle with their weight isn't exercise. It's not even the kinds of diet. It's how much activity they have day to day. So just having to walk more, fidget more, be up and down, just be active. It's sort of built-in calorie control.
There you go. Fidgeting more. It's funny how sedentary, is that the right word? Our lives have become
Yeah.
with computers, and we're supposed to have these computers. The computers are making your life better, eh? You're gonna sit and look at a screen all day, and you're gonna be sitting just as close as when my mom used to yell at me when we were kids in the 70s. She'd be like, "Don't sit so close to the screen. You're gonna go blind."
Only if you're watching Mork and Mindy, you had to be that close.
Yeah. My mom doesn't talk like that, by the way. I don't want her to send me hate mail. She's very lovely. But no, I mean, everyone's mom did that, and now it's even worse. We're walking around looking at our phones like, 6 inches in front of our face. And so, here in the office, I'm sitting at a what's supposed to be a stand-up desk. It's a very expensive stand-up desk. There's a stand-up desk to the left of me too, or the right of me. I can't tell directions clearly. And it's the first sign. And so I never use them. And like every now and then I'll be like, hey, this is a moving desk. It's like expensive. It goes like all the way up and down. I'm too tired to move it today.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what you're picking up on is that there is, sort of an environment human mismatch these days with all of the technology we have. I mean, we didn't have to necessarily talk as much about these things back in the 70s and 80s when we moved more. I mean, if you just look at kids, I think there's some statistic that like when we were kids in the 70s, something like 90% of kids walked or biked to school. And I think that's down to like 15% or something now. So you just look at how
you had to walk to the hose to drink from it.
Yeah, you had to drink from the hose, and right. And
that's how you survived.
We all were put outside until dark, from morning till dark, weren't invited back into the home until it was dark at night, right? So there were just so many more opportunities to be in constant motion, when technology wasn't part of our lives. But what we do know is that technology is not going away. And so one of the things we're trying to do is help people figure out how to, sort of address all of the technology and sedentarism we're doing these days, knowing that technology is not going away. And, one of the things we talk about is this idea of session costs. And you can think about it one example would be the session cost of a workout is that you would be sore and tired afterwards and maybe not as ready the next day to do your workout. But what we like to try to suggest people do is apply the session cost concept to their everyday activities. And so, if you need to sit for 8 or 9 hours because that's what your job requires, that's a session cost. But then you might actually then want to consider putting a little bit of input into your body later on in the form of walking, maybe some soft tissue mobilizations, just something to sort of address that session cost of long bouts of sitting. And like Kelly says, the goal is more movement. And, there's lots of ways you can be in a chair and still be fidgeting and moving around. And, as long as you're getting up every so often, really the goal is just not to sit in one position for really long periods of time.
So if we took your setup right now, you might find that you focus really well and you like these interviews seated. It just works for your brain. But what we want to do is raise you up and say, hey, here's a bar stool. Let's get you perching. Let's not just make you stand all the time. So Juliet and I are both leaning and perching right now.
Oh, wow.
Our feet are on the ground, but we're not sitting. And what happens there ultimately is what we're trying to do with all of this movement at a technical level is raise our activity requirements above 1.5 metabolic equivalents. So if you ever remember the old Stairmasters from hotels and you were like, what's a Met? And you would be like, I'm
do your workout.
I'm doing it 7 Mets. And you're like, I don't know what 7 Mets is. Is that good? It was like a bonus unit of like cherries or McNuggets. But the idea here is what we know is that a lot of the sedentary sort of behavior, physiology kicks on below 1.5. It's a kind of a metabolic equivalent. And sitting in a chair puts us at that 1.2. As soon as you stand, as soon as you perch, as soon as you move and have activate a little bit more musculature, your brain is like, oh, this is an activity. And really our goal is to try to limit that total amount of time. So again, we find that sometimes deep work requires people to sit, totally okay. But then what ends up happening is if you raise that desk up, gave yourself a bar stool, chances are without even thinking about it, you would start moving more because it invites a window of opportunity. And so what you've done there is exactly what this book is about, is reimagining our environments and asking us, hey, where and when are we spending our time and how might we think differently? Let me give you an example. Tonight, if you're listening to this, your homework, this is it. This is the number one homework. We want you to sit on the ground while you watch TV tonight. We know you're watching TV. The research is clear. But just sitting on the ground You can sit any way you want. You can kneel, you can side sit, you can long sit, crisscross applesauce. But what you'll get is 20 to 30 minutes of end range of motion in your hips. You'll be in a whole bunch of shapes and positions you're normally not in. You're going to find it uncomfortable. You have to lean up against your couch. Totally okay. And then eventually you're going to have to get up and down off the ground, which again is going to sort of expose you to a whole bunch of just novel movement that your body typically was using and requiring, but you haven't touched for a while. And that idea is suddenly, hey, in our busy lives, we don't want to give you another list of crap you got to get done to optimize your life. You feel pretty great. But if we start keeping an eye on, hey, where and when can I make these small changes? We find that these are the small hinges that open enormous doors.
There you go. And you guys cover a lot of different gambit in the book. You guys cover simple diet recommendations, doing the squat position a few times a week. There's a joke there somewhere, but I can't find it. Balance exercises, creating a movement-rich environment, getting enough sleep, sleeping on the floor or sitting on the floor, deep breathing, hamstring mobilization. There's a joke there somewhere that goes with the squatting part too. I don't know what that means. Walking at least, what is that, 8,000?
Yeah, we recommend 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day.
Mm-hmm.
Not 10,000. 8,000 is your minimum. So that you can just, if you're casually like, hey, I want to reduce everything that might kill me by 50%, walk 8,000 steps a day. 50%.
So if I do half that amount, I reduce it to 25%.
Nope, you get 1%. You get 1%.
Okay. Oh, damn.
But what you bring up is a really good point because again, Juliet and I are busy working parents. We have 2 teenage kids. We work in front of computers. While what we don't have is hours and hours every day to optimize our schedule. And Juliet gets up and writes her gratitude journal, and I get in front of my red LED lights, and we perfect meal prep. That's not reality. That is some Instagram horse shit. Mm-hmm. And what I want to point out to people is that when we begin to say, hey, what are the essentials and what's realistic that you can be consistent with for long periods of time? If you start chunking a little bit of movement, I'm going to walk for 5 minutes after my lunch. I'm going to just make sure that I'm moving around a little bit more. You can get to 8,000 steps pretty reasonably if you're a little bit more intentional about it, and your life begins to change.
I think the other thing is, you listed off, some of the things that are in our book, but one of our goals with this book was try to create the one book,
Vital Signs,
and that our goal here was to make a comprehensive book of basic health practices that was super accessible for anyone to follow. Now, if you go to any bookstore or onto Amazon, you can find 1,000 books on diet. You can find 1,000 books on workouts. If you look at any of these chapters, you can find tons of information about that. But what we found is that people often don't understand how all these behaviors interconnect and feed off of one another, so to speak. And we can give some examples of that. But we wanted to basically say, hey, look, you may or may not be into health and fitness, but you probably want to feel good in your body and be out of pain and
not be in a wheelchair and not be in a nursing home.
Yeah, and be able to play with your grandkids when you're older. Most people share that common feeling. And if you have that feeling, there again are some really basic things here. They're all interconnected and they're totally accessible and doable, even if you're not someone who loves to hit the gym.
There you go. There's a simplistic thing to it where, it's not, you don't have something super complex. It's very easy to understand. And, it's not something where you're like, eh. So let me ask you this. I do have a screen over here. So every now and then I turn my head that way.
Great.
And every now and then I even rotate to read what's going on that screen. And then sometimes when I'm eating the bag of Doritos, I'll there's a movement. Where I'm eating the bag of Doritos, I pick the Dorito out, sometimes there's some guacamole.
Well, check this out.
How much is that working for me in exercise?
Check this out. When we are talking, like you mentioned sort of diet, which is a word that throws people off immediately. I'm not into diet culture. I'm not into food culture. I don't want to count calories. And so what we know though, is that it is much easier to buffer some Doritos. I am about the cookie. I love cookies. I'm never going to turn down a cookie. No one in my house is safe. If we have cookies in the house, I'm going to wake up at 2 a.m. looking for cookies. But what do we know is that if we give people clear objective measures about aspects of their life they're not aware of. For example, one of the things that we know that everyone benefits from, wait for it, is more fiber, right? And how sexy is it to talk about, hey, let's get some more fiber.
Fiber. Ooh, baby.
But what we found out is that if we got people to eat more fruits and vegetables, specifically 800 grams. What is 800 grams of fruits and vegetables? 4 big apples. A banana weighs 100 grams. If you ate a pound of cherries, you're way into over 1,000 grams. And what you'll see is a pound of cherries, which I don't recommend eating all at once. You'll have explosive diarrhea, but you'll get the idea.
That's
But a
gonna hurt.
pound of cherries is 230 calories. And what we end up getting when we put all this micronutrients, all the phytonutrients, all the magic in fruits and vegetables, when we ask people to come up to this level, then we say, hey, here's the minimum amount of protein we want you to eat every day. What we find is people feel better. They're more cognitive, they're more lucid, their tissues handle better. And guess what? You're so full that you ate so many things. And then if you want to eat some Cheetos on top of it, knock yourself out. It's not going to hit. But what you'll find is there's also some calorie control built in there. And once again, this eating regimen, this is how we work with, remember, I'm a physical therapist, so I see a lot of injuries and a lot of surgeries. And if we're trying to help people get out of chronic pain or heal from a surgery, you're getting our prescription. If you're trying to change your body weight, you're getting our prescription. And if you want to eat beans and potatoes with your family and not have a weird bring your chicken bag and a breast to a party, you don't have to do that. You don't have to be a weirdo. We want to expand your nutrition choices, but understand that your sleep will be better, your body will feel better, you'll lose weight, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and I think what Kelly's hinting at is that, we are refugees as people in the health and fitness.
Survivors.
We're survivors of the health and fitness diet culture situation. And one of the things
Diet
that
wars. My keto trumps your paleo.
Most diets have done for all of us is restrict, including things like fruits and vegetables, which to me shows that we've really lost the forest through the trees when it comes to our health. I mean, every culture has eaten fruits and vegetables since there were people making records of what cultures are eating. People eat fruits and vegetables, just different kinds. And so, we've really lost the narrative. And one of the things we love about this style of eating is it's expansive. Every other diet people follow means that they have to cut out this dinner party with their friends and they can't have this alcohol and they can't have this. The way we see it is if you meet the minimums of eating some fruits and vegetables and getting some protein, and if you move enough throughout your day, you've got some wiggle room to be able to go have a glass of wine with your friends and be normal and not have to, again, like Kelly said, bring a baggie of chicken to your dinner party because you're on some, cleanse or special diet.
And here's what we've got by creating vital signs that are physical behavior. So some of them are about range of motion. How well do you move in your environment? But giving you a benchmark allows you to sort of make decisions. Hey, I'm crushing that. I don't need to pay attention to it. Or, wow, this is a real blind spot for me. The same way you go in and you get your blood pressure checked once in a while at the grocery store, you stick your arm in the machine, you're like, whoa, my blood pressure is really high or I'm killing it. If I say 120/80 is sort of our benchmark, then we have a place where we can start to pay attention. What we've done here with fitness in the last 20 years is we've made it completely subjective. We've made it completely confusing. And by giving people clear vital signs, they can realize, hey, I'm above that or I'm below that, but tomorrow I get to play better. And if we expand besides this, we've basically created this situation where we give fitness in 1 hour chunks. I go to my fitness class, my Peloton class, my CrossFit class. And if I don't get that 1 hour chunk,
I may as well do nothing.
I may as well do nothing. And I assume that 1 hour chunk 3 days a week is going to cover me. And it does not cover you. It's the 23 hours of the day plus adding in some of these essential behaviors. And lo and behold, you can start to make big boy, big girl decisions about how you want to live your life. And the hint at is that you think you feel good, but you can feel better. You think you're handling stress well, but you can actually handle stress better. How do we know? We run this experiment in Major League Soccer, in Premier Football, in NBA, NFL, military. We just test this over and over again, and it turns out we actually can be a little bit better and work a little bit harder and feel a little bit fresher.
There you go. I can attest to the fruits and vegetables things, 800 grams. So I need to see if I'm taking a full 800 grams of fruits and vegetables a day. I buy all my salads I have 1 to 2 salads a day. I buy all my salads from a local farm here in Utah, and it's all hydroponically grown. It's just everything about it. I make people drool on Facebook because they're like, oh my God, the lettuce you have and all the ingredients.
Love
that go
it.
into it. And one thing I learned is if you want to eat healthy, you got to make it taste good. So, it tastes
100%.
better than In-N-Out Burger. But I need to put more fruits into my diet. I eat a lot of pineapple because it's supposed to be good for gut health. Like I'm into eating different things that are really good for the gut health. So I ate a lot of pineapple. Beets are more vegetables. I don't really think I have a banana every day for the potassium. And
Well,
what people don't realize is a lot of these sugars that are in natural fruit, they're okay for your body to digest.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I just want to say if you're eating 2 salads every day and a banana, you are 100% probably
Mm.
exceeding 800 grams every day. I mean, that's just an eyeball, but my guess is you're 100% exceeding it. I mean, I think it's just an example of, you know, a banana again is, or a whole entire pound of cherries is 230 calories. I mean, I
Wow.
don't know how many calories a pound of donuts is and how much sugar that is, but I mean, it's a lot. And so I think part of it is just a volume
dude, a
issue.
cookie at Starbucks is like 380 calories.
Yeah.
These cookies they're making nowadays, these new crumble cookies.
Oh,
Yeah.
Have
Oh,
you
and they're
seen
like,
these things?
Dude.
yeah, and they're as big as your face
So
and have like an
can
inch
you
of frosting on
and
top.
imagine the conversation we're having? People are like, "Well, that banana and those apples is too much sugar, but you want a crumble cookie?" And Julie and I are like, "Holy hell, what are we talking about here?"
Yeah, like
And
we do not have an obesity epidemic in this country because people are eating bananas.
surrounded by
Like
bananas.
we have lost the narrative.
And the other thing that you're getting, besides all the micronutrients, all the fiber, is you're getting choice. If you're like, I love pineapple, I'm like, bro, eat 800 grams of pineapple every day. And on day 3, you're like, maybe I'll eat a banana because I'm sort of sick of eating that much pineapple. But if you eat an entire melon, it's like 210 calories. Eat an entire cantaloupe melon and be like, I'm so hungry. I'm going to have this ice cream. You can't do it. One of the greatest desserts you can probably have is like 10 frozen cherries. Like you're there, just let them get all mushy and you're going to be like, this is like gelato and it's zero, very, very low calorie. But what ends up happening again is that we don't really care about calories. What we're saying is if you want to have collagen and joints that work well, and you want to have muscles that function right and a brain that works, you've got to be putting these essential nutrients in. And ideally, what we've learned is that it's all from whole foods. So however you want to do that, 4 big apples a day, you're into rutabaga, you're a rutabaga guy, knock yourself out.
And
Mhm.
I have one of my biggest influences is an author named Kate Shanahan who wrote a book called Deep Nutrition, and she went around and studied food cultures around the world and realized that there are basically 4 things that all cultures throughout all of history always do. They do the same things. It's just about how they prepare their food. Every culture eats fermented food. Every culture eats meat on the bone. They all eat a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. The only difference is actually how they prepare their food and which foods, which underneath those bigger categories they eat. And so that's another reason we love our approach to eating here is that, man, it is like independent of culture. You can eat however your culture, whatever your cultural choices are, and you can choose underneath that larger, umbrella, you can choose whatever foods you enjoy eating and make you feel good.
There you go. There you go. A few other things we'll tease out on the book. You guys talk about the importance of mobility, and I guess this is really important.
Yeah.
My mom had her 2 knees replaced, and I remember when she got them replaced.
At the same
Uh,
time?
No, she got them done different times, and I remember the doctors were like, "Hey, you need to get up, start moving around now." And I'm like, "Don't do that. If I get my knees replaced, I'm laying in bed for like 3 months or something, and I don't know." And they're like, "No, you have to move."
That's
and,
right.
and people I don't think realize how important that is to all of your different muscles and ligaments. Talk to us a little bit about that, if you will.
Well, the first thing is let's define mobility for everyone. It's your ability to move through your environment pain-free, doing what you want to do, right? That's so Julian and I, our goal is when we're 80, we're both 50. When we're 80, we want to ride mountain bikes and ski and race cars and do whatever we want. Like really, we want to be able to just be like, what are we doing today? Great. We're partying with our bodies.
I'm
Even though
tired
we're
of
80.
thinking. I'm 50, and I'm just tired thinking about what you just said.
Precisely.
I might have to go take a nap.
So one of the things that we know very much with the body is it's use it or lose it. We have to load a tissue. We have to load your joint surfaces. We have to load your tendons and ligaments. If we want them to be tendons and ligaments, they respond to loading. So when you load a bone, for example, what ends up happening is you flex the bone a little bit and you create a little electric current in there, a piezoelectric moment where what it does is that electrical current that happens when you flex the bone calls in other cells to come in and rebuild that bone. Osteoblasts. Remember, osteoblasts build. So if you don't load the
I
bone,
don't think most of us learned that, Kelly.
welcome to the Chris Voss Health Show.
Is this an OnlyFans channel?
That's right. And what ends up happening is if you don't load that bone, it doesn't get the call to reinforce it. So we've got to have this kind of constant movement. But one of the things you're finding out is that how we move in the day typically is in a very small movement language. We only we're 90 degrees with our hips. We walk around a little bit. We don't really put our arms over our head. We don't have to use our bodies because we can drive and everything's right in front of us. And so what we can imagine is, how then do I begin to expose my body to its normative ranges? And as we talked about, sitting on the ground is one of the ways that you're going to have to flex your legs a little bit more than you do if you just sit in the car and sit at the table in the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to move your hips a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're trying to do here is help people understand that no one gives a crap about their mobility until they realize they don't have it and they can't do something, or they realize they've got pain and they need it.
One of the ways I like to think about mobility that is just a great sort of mental visual for me. If you think about your mobility or your physical capacity as like a wide hallway, like a wide hospital hallway, but the more and more you lose your mobility, your hallway starts to narrow and narrow. And what that means is that your choices about what you can do with your body start getting narrower and narrower and narrower. And what you don't want is to get so narrow that you're bedridden or stuck in a lazy boy for your entire retirement. Most people, when now and as they grow older, want to be able to use their body and be able to have as much physical choice as they can. And, you can keep your hallway and keep that corridor as wide open as possible if you retain some of your mobility and actually put some attention towards it.
And some of the diagnostics that we have in here, remember, we're still about objective measures. So we open the book with this simple test called the sit and rise test.
Mm-hmm.
So this is it. All you need to do is stand there, cross your legs, lower yourself to the ground like a kindergartner sitting on the mat, crisscross applesauce. But see if you cannot put a hand down or put your knee down. Can you just lower yourself down?
Are you envisioning it right now, Chris?
Yeah, and I can't do that.
So hold on. That's only
full
50% of the
collapse
test.
floor.
We all can end up on the ground. It turns out the number one reason people end up in nursing homes, they can't get up off the ground by themselves anymore. So this test is, can you rise from the ground from that same position without putting a knee down or hand down? Well, it turns out that it's an excellent predictor of all-cause mortality and morbidity. So
Really?
Because what we're really seeing is, hey, you're going to have less movement choice. Your balance is going to be off. You're probably going to have more back pain. You're going to have less sort of power in your movements. You're not going to feel as good or want to move as well. The easiest way to start working on it, we already hinted at, is to do the things. Lower yourself to the ground, sit on some while you're watching TV, sit in all these positions, and then eventually you're going to have to stand back up. And when you start to noodle on it, it's that compounding interest. I'm putting 1 cent in the bank today. In a week, I've got 10 cents. In 2 weeks, I've got $100. And what you'll start to realize is that if we give you these vital signs around essential movements, you can start to just knock at them one at a time, a little bit, and you'll have a language for making yourself feel better. Knee hurts? Well, hey, let me check the couch test. Suddenly I'm looking at my hip extension. Oh, my back also feels better when I do that. So the body is this really complex system. In fact, the brain is the most sophisticated structure in the known universe. But when we start to interlay these behaviors together, walking more suddenly makes it so you fall asleep and stay asleep. Holy crap. I didn't know that walking and sleep were related. Wow, my back feels better because I started sitting on the ground. Now we're cooking with gas.
Well, and I think what Kelly hinted at that I wanted to mention is that we've been taught that our aging process is just this sort of down, like we're all just going downhill, downhill, downhill. And that's really not the case. I mean, while it is true that we all at some point start to lose some of our muscle mass as we age, it's harder to keep muscle mass on, especially after age 60. That is true. But we don't actually have to lose our range of motion. In fact, if you look at other cultures where people actually, practice squatting, get up and down off the ground,
toilet on the ground,
sleep on the ground, sleep on the ground, their older populations haven't lost their range of motion at all. And coincidentally, it's not coincidentally. And as a result, they have much fewer orthopedic injuries, joint replacements, and overall
less hip pain, less knee pain,
back pain. So they're suffering from much fewer general orthopedic problems than we are. Those of us who mostly spend our time sitting and don't actually practice these ranges of motion. And the other thing that doesn't have to go as we age is our mental acuity. And while we didn't write a book about the brain, what we do know is that if you do some care and feeding of this carcass that is the human body, you sleep enough, get some fruits and vegetables on board, move enough, and your movement is so connected to your brain that you're actually going to be more likely to actually keep your mental acuity as well as you age.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Yeah, you mentioned we all have sophisticated brains. Have you seen some of the politicians we have in the U.S.?
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
That really does call it into question.
Julia was looking at me with a smile. I'm like, she knows the joke I have set up for that. The other thing you touched on is the sleep part, and basically, what you're saying about these ligaments and muscles in our body is use it or lose it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So sleep. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh,
I've
man.
learned that I have to get 8 hours of sleep, and sometimes I can get 4 or 6, as long as I get that afternoon nap. And I've learned how important this is. I've gotten like an 8 sleep bed. I'll give them a
Oh,
plug.
fantastic.
We reviewed on the Chris Voss show. I love it. The heating and the cooling, but it
Oh, it's the
also
best.
it's got an AI system in it that adjusts the heating and cooling to keep me in REM sleep and deep sleep, and it shows me how good. It even gives me a score. It's like, you have an F today because you didn't sleep right.
Let me ask you, did you start paying attention to your sleep once you got the 8 sleep, or did
Yeah.
you get the 8 sleep because you were already paying attention to your sleep and you wanted to juice it up?
We do reviews on the Chris Voss show, so they sent it to me, and I was mostly interested in the warm bed part, because there's nothing like getting in a warm bed.
Oh, it's the best.
and
Oh,
and then after a workout, there's nothing like getting in a nice icy cold bed, and
Yeah.
it'll help those muscles. And so that was mostly it. But now the feedback it gives me, but man, I've learned that the hard way. If I really want to have a good day and be on point, 8 hours of sleep.
yeah. And I mean, you're exactly right. That's the minimum we say in our book. I mean, we actually say, again, these objective measures, 7 hours of sleep if you just want to get by. But
Survive.
if you want to, be focused and creative at work, if you want to grow muscle, if you want to recover from surgery,
Lose weight.
lose weight,
Lose
like
weight.
8 is the absolute minimum. And
Chronic pain. 8.
And the other thing we learned from, because we also track our sleep using something called an Aura Ring, and we've tried all the devices, and we have cooling pads on our beds as well, which we love. But what the biggest thing we learned once we actually got some data on our own sleep is that you actually need to be in bed for almost an hour longer than you're planning to sleep to get the amount of sleep that you are thinking you're going to get, because we all naturally lose almost an hour of sleep with normal wake cycles, getting up to use the bathroom, you name it. And so, if someone says to you, oh, I went to sleep at 11 and woke up at 7, that's actually 7 hours of sleep. That's not 8 hours of sleep. And, so we also, like you, really need 8 hours of sleep. Obviously, sometimes we have to travel and, that gets disrupted. But when we're home and we are really focused on getting 8 hours of sleep, which means we have to be in bed for 9 hours.
And you hit on something that was so great. Sometimes I get 4, sometimes I get 6, but you now have a baseline. And what ends up happening is you start making different decisions about, hey, I'm going to have to start preparing for bed to make sure I get this minimum. That means for example, Juliet has to start cutting off her caffeine at noon. Maybe I got another wiggle room. I used to be like, I could have an espresso and go to bed, until I started measuring it. And turns out that was a bunch of crap. I cannot drink a bunch of caffeine and then sleep very well.
Mhm.
And, my deep sleep just went out. So if we're talking about how your brain clears out the waste, we're talking about putting out all the hormones in deep sleep that allow you to repair and heal and have healthy tissues.
Consolidating all your memories.
Holy crap. The fastest stress, the biggest stressor you can add is this disrupted sleep. But because we don't give people this clear measure, if we ask 100% of our friends, you get enough sleep? They're like, oh yeah, I mean, I'm alive. I'm better than you, And what we find, again, we didn't want to become sleep experts, but we were like, we cannot win a world championship or a gold medal until we're sleeping. And we end up, again, it's notable that when we come and are asked to work through the environments of high performance teams and individual and world champions, these are the practices. And you'll be shocked to learn that the best athletes in the world are like, I'm a terrible sleeper. How'd you know? I'm like, well, because your knee always hurts. And when we started getting them this, well, tell me about why that. Well, I like to sleep with the TV on. Well, holy crap, you cannot go to sleep with the TV on and expect to heal and perform at a high level. So I really appreciate that you're kind of found out that 8 hours is magic and are telling people, if you get 8 hours of sleep, your life will change.
And I mean, I can't put too fine a point on this. We owned a physical therapy clinic for a long time. And I imagine a lot of your listeners, at various times in their lives struggle with aches and pains. And I cannot emphasize it enough that, for anyone who comes into our physical therapy clinic with pain, the first question we ask is, how much sleep do you get? Because, if we're
Dirty
dealing
data.
with someone with low back pain and they're reporting that they're getting 5 hours of sleep, I mean, our answer to that is, what are we even talking about? Like, we don't know. We have no idea what the source of it is. It's complicated, but sleep is definitely a factor.
It makes all the difference. I do intermittent fasting. I've lost 75, almost 100 pounds.
Holy
twice.
shit.
Good job. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there are times for some reason I don't get 4 hours, or I don't get 8 hours sleep straight, and so I'll do an afternoon nap.
It's great.
And I'm 55. We used to tease our dad. You're so goofy.
Oh, I
You always
know.
take a nap, Dad. Now I'm like, well, I realize what the old man was up to.
Sorry, Dad.
Yeah, sorry, Dad. We should appreciate you more.
But I want let me dive into your intermittent fasting for a second. So everyone who is listening to the show understands that what basically is happening. You're delaying some of the windows of eating, and you're compressing your windows of consumption.
Yeah.
So what we know from the research is that's totally valid. But what we often find in our athletic populations, or people who have to move, is that is basically hidden calorie control, and that oftentimes we see that people are underfueled. So during that window, you've really got to hustle to get those protein minimums and those fruits and vegetable minimums. So let me give you an example for me of understanding principles and making choice. So notice that we didn't say intermittent fasting is bad, but let me give you an example of how this principle can drive behavior. I found out that because I played with intermittent fasting too, because I was like, this is cool. I want to be less gross for my wife. I want to lose, be more shredded.
Less gross?
Sign me up. Less gross. It's a technical term, and it's science, and it's definitely objective.
How often is she calling you gross? What's going on over
I
there?
No, she's just like, she never calls me gross. She just says, be less
Just
gross.
less gross.
Less
Oh my
gross.
God, that is
So-
not true.
What I found out was that if I didn't eat until noon, I was often way behind on calories, and I would get full and not be able to eat these big meals. I wouldn't work out in the afternoon and feel very good. But at 9 or 10 o'clock, I was starving, and I would have to eat like a chicken in a jar of peanut butter. And then going to sleep on a big belly, guess what?
Yeah,
I didn't sleep very well.
Yeah.
And subsequently, what I realized was like, holy moly, I didn't think about how this eating decision was actually changing and influencing how I was sleeping. So now in the morning, I make sure I have protein and a handful of fruit. I don't have to eat a huge meal, but I make sure I'm covering those basics.
Yeah. And I was a guy for 20 years who thought that having a nightcap with vodka was a good way.
Oh,
to
yeah. You
round
slept
out
great.
the-
Yeah.
I
You
slept
fall asleep
great.
real
I thought
quickly,
it-
right? You thought you slept great.
Yeah.
We didn't know. We didn't know. I mean, I think that's we want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And one of the things that happened was that you felt less stressed when you had that nightcap. What
Yeah.
we did was, hey, if we don't give people the right tools or a different set of tools, people will reach for whatever tool makes them feel good. And bourbon and vodka are proven tools to take away pain. They
For a
just
very
turn out.
short time,
They
until
just
the next
turn out.
morning.
Yeah, that's right. They're not
Like,
great at things like sleep.
Yeah. And sleep is so important. I mean, I with intermittent fasting and trying to lose weight, if I do like 4 hours of sleep, I'll feel bloated, I'll feel ugly, nasty,
Gross.
and then and I have to program it in my day. Like you said, I have to say, okay, there's going to be somewhere we're doing a 2 to 4 hour nap, and I will do that 2 to 4 hour nap in the afternoon, and I will have this deep REM sleep. The kind of drool on your pillow where you wake up,
Yeah, that
half
feels
the
good.
bed's floating, and you've had you've had weird dreams where Elton John and is in your thing in that yellow. I don't
Amen.
know. I was listening to Yellow Brick Road earlier, so I figured I'd use that. So you're off in Wizard of Oz land, but I'll lose 2 to 3 pounds over those 4 hours, and it's astounding to me. I'll just be like, holy crap!
That's not being stressed. That's lowering
Mhm.
cortisol levels.
Mhm.
That's your body letting go of hydration and water. We normally see these big fluctuations when people are super stressed. And you're absolutely right. And the problem is, this is the problem with humans. We're so good at being stressed. We
But there's a
are
lot of problems with humans. though.
we are masters of under eating, eating crappy, smoking cigarettes, still winning world championships. but what gets you there are not the things that keep you here. And I think the problem is we have so much tolerance in our 20s. I mean, there was a time in my life where I think when I met Juliet, I was in my 20s, I could cut off my hand and the next day I'd be back. And she'd be like, you cut off your hand yesterday. I'm like, I'm 26. It's
This
totally
is why
fine.
she wants you to be less gross.
That's
Yeah.
right.
The whole
Don't cut off
cutting
your hand.
Don't cut off
But
your
I
hand,
would
baby.
regenerate in the night and be like, I'm back, baby. But at 50, I cannot get away with that anymore.
Yeah.
And what we learned was, hey, what happens if I talk to my 26-year-olds about what I've learned when I'm 50? And they can go harder, they can extend their careers, they can be kind of crazier, they can handle more stress in their lives. Sick baby, sick loved one, red eye, work stress. It's the same thing. Athletics or work stress, exactly the same stress in your brain.
There you go.
I was a Division I athlete in college, and it was in the early 90s.
You were so elite.
when the fat-free diet was all the rage.
Bagels.
And I look back and I think, man, I could have been so much more awesome because
Could have
I
been a contender.
survived. I survived my entire college athletic career eating bagels, red vines, and mochas. And I look back and I think, man, if I just had some fruits and vegetables and some protein, like I could have been so exceptional. Instead, I was just sort of wallowing around in like Bagelville. So,
Yeah.
So puffy.
I was
That
so
was the
puffy.
Einstein bagel.
Oh,
Yeah,
fad.
yeah,
they're
yeah.
so
I
good.
was so puffy. And Boboli Italian bread shell. I ate a lot of those
Oh
too.
wow. Yeah.
As a
Remember those?
senior in high school, I ate at break. I ate 4 bagels and
Wow.
a hot chocolate. And then the next class, I was so sleepy.
Go figure.
Oh, who knows?
Yeah, you just
4
crash from the
bagels.
sugar.
Anyone
Yeah.
here try to eat 4 bagels in a row? Let me know how that goes for you.
I can't eat 1 or 2. I've had those. I remember back in the day, I used to have those Einstein bagels, and I'm like, this is healthy for me. And I just crash from the sugar. So you guys cover the whole gambit. We've touched on it a little bit in the book, so people need to order the book so they can get it. Anything you
For
want
sure.
to tease out on the book before we go?
It's a lot easier than you think. Juliet and I respect that you're actually a busy, working, competent person, and we don't want you to throw away your life.
Let's not push it that I'm competent, though.
Oh, okay. The idea here is that there's a ton that you can begin to work in the margins of your day where it doesn't feel like you've gone off the deep end. And what we feel like, honestly, legitimately, is that the household is the most functional and most important unit of change. All we have to do is start to be better in our little neighborhood, our little family, and that's how we can transform society. It really makes a big difference.
And then I just want to leave with 2 things. The first is a phrase that our friend Dave Spitz taught us, which is never do nothing. Kelly used to do a 10-minute workout at 10 p.m. when our kids were little. And what we've learned over the years is you can actually make a lot of changes and important impacts on your health in 2, 5, 10-minute blocks. And so even if you don't love exercise or lost the chance to go to your workout at the gym, there's a ton of little things you can do that actually make a huge difference in 10-minute increments. And so we're huge fans of sort of the never do nothing philosophy. And then the other thing is we actually have a free 21-day Built to Move challenge on our website at builttomove.com.
It's a
So
video
for-
companion
It's
course.
a video companion course to the book. So for anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more and getting demonstrations on all the exercises and tests, there's a ton of supportive content that's out there free that people can follow along with.
And you guys have a podcast too. You're coming
Yeah.
to us from your amazing podcast studio.
We
talked
do.
about
It's called The Ready State.
There you
And-
go.
yeah.
There you go. So this has been wonderful to have you guys on and talk about this stuff. It really simple, important things. Like people ask me, oh, go in the gym, that seems complicated. It's kind of production to go there. But, once you're there, I used to, when I even felt bad, I didn't go to the gym. I'm like, fuck it. I'm getting in the car and I'm driving
Yes.
there. And if I don't feel like doing anything when I get there, I'm just going to sit there and, maybe I'll play with something. And and a lot of times I get there and just be in the environment and my body would be like, okay, let's try a few things. And then pretty much you're back into your routine. And sometimes it's just that being there factor. Intermittent fasting.
Losing as much weight as you've lost is a miracle. It is such an anomaly that people listening to this, if you have a family member, listen to what Chris has done. A little bit of movement. Don't rely on motivation. Just go through the motions. Start looking at some of these things. You can transform your life. It's really is a lot easier than people think, but what you've done is incredible.
Thanks, man. And what you guys have done in the book is you've really outlined the simplistic nature of a lot of this stuff. Like it
Yes.
doesn't have to be complex. And it's funny, and we should probably mention this because people do this in our heads because we're idiot humans. And we think that, okay, well, if I'm going to lose weight or if I'm going to exercise, it's got to be a big production. We got to spend a bunch of money doing it. We got to do all this thing. And in your guys' book, you guys have, okay, get 8 hours of sleep. Like,
Get out of sleep, walk around your neighborhood, say hi to your neighbors.
oh, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Have you seen my neighbors? No, just kidding.
This is why you have to go walk and see
Yeah.
your neighbors. This is how we have a civil society.
What
Just-
I do with my teenagers to get them exercise is I give them like a moving box of their stuff, and I have them practice going out the front door for when they finally turn 18. I'm like, I just want to make sure we know this, so when you hit 18, we know how this works, right? That's not going to work.
We have a senior in high school. I'm taking that home and employing it tonight.
Yeah. I mean, it's exercise. I'm kidding. I don't have teenagers. I put all my kids in military school, and I don't know. They call me every now and then when they can get through. So there's that. But it's been wonderful to have you on the show, folks. Give us your .coms wherever you want people to find you on the interwebs.
Sure. We're at thereadystate.com. You can get the 21-day Built to Move challenge and learn more about the book at builttomove.com. We are at The Ready State on all the social channels, and I am at Juliet Starrett on Instagram.
There you go. And one thing I was going to ask you, as I forgot, you guys are standing at the desk there at the podcast stage. Do you guys have one of those? Do you guys have anything on for your feet, like any of those softener? They have like these foam things. Do you guys have any of those?
Yeah. So our feeling about a standing desk is it doesn't count as a standing desk unless you have a place to put your foot like you would at a bar. That actually takes your back out of extension and makes it easier to stand for longer. So we think having a place to put your foot is key, but we're total fans of those squishy mats because sometimes it is hard on the feet to stand on, hard concrete.
You're not supposed to be still.
And and then Kelly's actually perching and I'm standing just so that we're like an even height in this podcast.
Oh.
But we each get credit for, he gets credit for perching and I get credit for standing. And so yeah, huge fans of mats and any way that you can make a standing desk feel more comfortable.
I need to look into that. I need to start using my standing desk. I got 2 of these damn things.
Well, let me leave you with one idea. If you start standing and fidgeting instead of just sitting, there's a simple calculator you can probably find that gives you a rough idea. Juliet, if she just doesn't sit at work, she burns 100,000 calories a year. I'm way bigger. I'm almost twice as large as she is. That gives me 170 to 180,000 calories of ice cream
or Doritos
that I can eat and not have it mess up anything. I don't have to do anything extra, and I can smash 180,000 calories of ice cream a year for free.
Wow. Now I know why she wants you to be less gross.
That's right.
That's a lot of ice cream, dude.
I know. Look, that's how I work. Juliet's like, I want to live forever. I'm like, I just want to smash more ice cream.
I just want to, well, I mean, that's the reward basis. People need to have a little bit of reward for the work you do.
Seems reasonable.
Every now, I mean, that's why I go, my 800 grams of fruit is, I just go to McDonald's, get the Big Mac and the cherry shake. That's not right. People
you can do that once in a while for sure.
Yeah. And that's why you be good. Every now and then I'll go get some fried onion rings, which aren't too bad. So there's that. Anyway, thank you very much for having us on the show. You're on your podcast. I'm on my podcast. So whoever was on the show today, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much, guys.
Oh, it's so fun to talk to you. Thanks, Chris.
There you go. Order up wherever fine books are sold. My family and friends of the Chris Voss Show family, the family that loves you but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as your mother-in-law. I've seen her. She's nice. Anyway, order the book wherever fine books are sold. Built to Move, the 10 essential habits to help you move freely and live fully. I'm gonna do some calorie check and see how much when I swivel my chair to the side computer does. So maybe
over a year, tens of calories.
Yeah, probably tens. So anyway, order wherever fine books are sold. Refer the show to your family and friends, folks. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, goodreads.com/Chris Voss. All those crazy places the kids play on the internet. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. And that should have